Good morning. Welcome to Grand Rounds, and we have a wonderful treat this morning. We have Dean Akinwuntan giving us a presentation. Dean Akinwuntan became the 6th Dean of the School of Health Professions in January of 2016 and previously served as the Associate Dean at the College of Allied Health in Augusta University. He received his education at the Catholic University of Louvain in Belgium. I probably mispronounced that, but close enough, where he received his Ph.D. and his master's. He has an international reputation in his research interest of development of simulation and virtual technologies to improve activities of daily living in patients with neurologic impairment. And prior to coming to KU, I think one of the large accomplishments was the establishment of the driving simulation center at his previous institution, and as well as here. He has a lot of honors, and we can't go through all of them, but I'll highlight a few. In 2014, he was awarded the Fulbright Scholarship, and his project was entitled The Improvement of Physiotherapy Education and Research and Rehabilitation of Patients with Neurologic Injury in Nigeria. He subsequently was named to the Fulbright Specialist roster and now serves as part of the peer review committee that reviews Fulbright applications. And also was awarded a Fulbright Specialist Award in 2016 and spent time in Iceland. So we're absolutely thrilled to hear his talk, activities in the Laboratory for Advanced Rehabilitation Research and Simulation and the School of Health Professions. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. Can you hear me well? Good. Well, so this morning I will be giving a talk on opportunities for collaborations. And a part of it will be on my research and the research going on in the LARRS lab. But that's just only an example of the several labs that we have in the School of Health Professions. This is particularly very interesting for me because I would also show you along the lines how collaboration has been our biggest strength. And so we really are interested in expanding that collaboration to physical medicine and rehabilitation. I think I would not be wrong in saying the larger of the collaborations we have right now is more with neurology. But at the same time, we have with physical medicine and rehabilitation. And I like the idea of the chair of the department, Raj, when he brought together a group of researchers and showed us a research space and said, let us brainstorm on what research can we do together. You know, and I really think that's the next phase. Now, physical medicine, my relationship with physical medicine and rehabilitation dated as far back as 1996 and got consolidated when I got to Belgium at the Catholic University of Leuven when the stroke unit was in physical medicine. Well, the stroke unit was in neurology, but they have a specialized rehabilitation institute, and physical medicine and rehabilitation was in charge of the entire hospital. And so that was the hospital where I worked, and the only way I could have been successful was a perfect working relationship with the PMR guys. So one of my first international awards was at the International PMR conference, and that I think was in Prague. Sometime, I think in 2002, 2003, I cannot remember that. But my relationship with PMR dates back a long time. And so one of the things I really would like to accomplish as the Dean of the School of Health Professions at the KU Med Center is a very strong relationship between researchers in the School of Medicine and that in PMR. So, I would tell you that there's a new life, a new resurgence in research in the School of Health Professions. Our newsletter that will come out in about 2-3 weeks, and I will drop some off at your offices, is basically to celebrate our recent research success. Now, I present this to you just to tell you the extent to which the school has committed to intramural funding. This was a school that used to do maybe $20,000, $30,000 in research funding, but if we don't collect the data that we need, pilot data, it is difficult to compete for those extramural funding. And I appreciate that. And so we went from like $25,000, $30,000 to close to $225,000 in intramural funding. Now, it's a gamble, obviously. You hope for a good return on investment, right? But the one thing I also want to point out on this slide is the fact that you would see some are just the School of Health Professions, some are in collaboration with the School of Medicine, some are in collaboration with the KUMC Frontiers, which is the research institute. So again, the emphasis is on collaboration. If you look at the number of funds or grants just from the School of Health Professions, it probably would be about 80,000 to 100,000. But because we collaborated with other people, we were able to jump up that number. Now, talk about immediate return on investment. We used to do maximum 2-3 PI grants in the School of Health Professions, and the total package would be maybe $3 million, $4 million. I think one time we were at $5 million, right? We went with this new emphasis on research and providing the right infrastructures and environment. We went from 2 to 17 over 2 years. And we went from about $2 million, between $2-3 million in grants to $10 million. Now, when you look at an $8 million difference compared to the $225,000 we infused, you would agree with me that's a fantastic return on investment. But that's what research takes. It takes a lot of money upfront, expecting bigger money as it goes on. The other thing, again, I really want to point out again is look at the sponsorship and collaborators. Again, you see we work with the University of Arizona State, the fourth one, the University of Cincinnati, University of Delaware, the third one, University of California, Southern California and Texas Southwestern, which is the second one. And you can go on like that and you can see the number of collaborations that exist. Now, collaborations are strong and very important these days because funding mechanisms encourage it. The NIH would be proud to spend $2 million, $3 million funding 2 institutions, 2 schools, 4 departments, rather than give $2 million to just one person. The chances of success is also higher because it means the departure of one person does not necessarily mean the death of that research. So, yes, there are people who are lone rangers. It's getting more competitive, but the opportunity for collaborative research is really increasing, and that's what we need to tap into. Okay, so just 2 days ago, our 18th grant came in, and that's a total of about $3.5 million over 5 years. Now, if you add that to the $10 million from the previous slide, we're now at almost 13.5, and hopefully we're looking to round off the year with about $15 million in grant. Now, the reason I point this out again is this is an example of a good collaboration that can happen right here on our campus. Dr. Deb Sullivan is the chair of our dietetics and nutrition program, and Jeff Burns is the chief of neurocognitive division in the Department of Neurology. They came together to put out a grant together that says enhanced Mediterranean diet for Alzheimer's disease. Who would have connected both in the first place? Who would have connected those? You know, but then they came up with that. Like I said, the strength of this grant was nutrition on the one hand, and better understanding of that, how that affects the development of Alzheimer's disease and can help prevent it on the other hand. That's what the NIH wants. If he had gone alone, he might have been successful, but the chances are lower. Same with Dr. Sullivan. Okay, again, so one of the things I really look out for when I am going to institutions, when I was interviewing for the dean's position, one of the things I was looking out for was, would I find good collaborations? And one of my faculty, Dr. Susan Jackson, introduced me to Dr. Shelley Bhattacharya. And Dr. Shelley Bhattacharya told me of her interest in driving, in geriatric medicine, and all the stuff. And I was like, okay, we'll see how far that goes. And I think as soon as I was named the dean, a month later, she sent me an email because I had not arrived on campus and said, there may be an opportunity for collaboration. And I said, yes, that's really what I'm for. So I landed, and what had happened was this. And again, I just want to use this as an example of what collaborations should be. The Department of Transport put together these RFAs for big grants, but it has to be in consortiums. The Midwestern Consortium knew they had to work with the University of Kansas. At the University of Kansas, they also have a type of driving research going on in Lawrence, but that was more to look at engineering factors with driving. But Shelley had reached out to them and said, we have someone who is a medical expert in driving coming and joining us. So Lawrence immediately reached out and said, I think the other universities are going to be putting in expertise in engineering. Our strength could be in our medical component. And Dr. Bhattacharya came to me and said, Abiodun, this was barely 1 month that I became dean, 1 month of coming on campus. Anyways, we scrambled in 3 months to put the grant together. And it was our first successful grant. Our consortium, the Midwestern Consortium, got the grant for $13.75 million. And I think the part for the University of Kansas would come to about $3 million, and about 750,000 of those will come to us. So again, another evidence of collaboration and that it works across board. One that is ongoing is a COBRI grant, and I'm sure you all know Randy Nudo, who is your vice chair in the Department of Medicine and Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation. He and John Tiefel in physiology are leading a COBRI grant application. Working with them is Dr. Claudine and Dr. Hannah Davis. So, with that, again, I would say the next slides will tell you how do you then collaborate with us. But I hope I've been able to show to you that we're really for collaborations. We really will work with you. The leadership in the school right now will almost go out of its way to see that that collaboration works. The biggest impediment to collaborations have always been, will the institutions, will the schools where those faculty come from, will they be willing to provide the support? And when I talk of support, I'm talking of support in terms of space, time, dedicated time to that research, being sponsored to go for the right conferences, the right learning mechanism, visiting the NIH to speak with your program officer to understand what is being funded and all of those. These are the kind of things that require money up front. And those are the things that typically don't come from the collaborating departments and institutions and causes frustration, it's usually not because the faculty don't want to work together. It's all the logistics behind it. But again, I'm just trying to say we understand that, and that should not be a problem here. So, we're lucky to have one of the most successful researchers, I would say, on our campus be our Associate Dean for Research. She herself has, I can't even count the number of RO1s Dr. Susan Carlson has. She's been doing a phenomenal job. And she has started a forum for the School of Health Professions researchers where you bring up your research ideas, you bring up your AIMS page and all of those, and it is discussed and you get a triage. What I would like to see is extend an invitation of those to you, because it is one of the opportunities for you to see firsthand what research proposals are our faculty contemplating. She also started a new system in our school. So I came and I said, I'm going to put a lot of money to collaborative research. And I charged the departments and I said, if at least 3 departments can collaborate on one research, they would get $20,000 in pilot grants. If for every other department that joins the collaboration, it's an additional $5,000. And still, that year nobody applied because it was a difficult concept. And she came up with the Shark Tank concept. And one of the requirements is it has to be a collaboration between at least 2 departments. And so our departments were forced to come together and they did the Shark Tank. And so I think dietetics and nutrition and physical therapy were the group that won the first award. And we're going to do more of those. But what was very important in that presentation was that the other applicants and the other researchers were the ones who graded the presentations. So they saw what their own applications were lacking. 1. 2, they listened to the others present and realized, maybe I could have joined that group. Maybe it would have been a stronger presentation. And so it opened up the opportunity for our own faculty, because you do know that the School of Health Professions has 8 uniquely different departments. So our collaborative efforts started even within the school, because we were not having a lot of those collaborations. Now we're getting, our departments were collaborating more with different departments in the School of Medicine rather than within the School of Health Professions. And so the Shark Tank went a long way to support that. Now, the best way to navigate the different research labs that we have in the AU School of Health Professions is to visit that link, okay? And I'm just going to click on it and see. Let's see what happens. Okay, so these are research lab groups in the School of Health Professions. Whichever one, my suggestion would be take some time, go through each of the labs, because each of them are doing uniquely different things. And I think I'm almost confident to say there are applications for physical medicine and rehabilitation in all of these labs. So, for instance, we will navigate through a couple. If you look at that, here you would see Dr. Marcio Santos as the lab director. Unfortunately, I think this is one that will change because Marcio just told us he'll be leaving to Florida. But then this is an example of his lab. Ever Silveria, he's there. He's the doctoral student in the lab. Yasir, okay, he's not here. And Yahaya, no, he's not here too. Okay, so these are some of the labs, and you can read about their publications, and you can read about ongoing projects. Then we go back, let's click on one. Health, exercise, and aging. Okay, that's I think that's the lab of Dr. Pludin. Okay, so yes, lab director Dr. Pludin. Now, each of our lab directors know that this presentation is going on. They're open to emails from you. They will be willing to talk to you on any area of interest that you find along these lines. So let's exit that and go back to the presentation. So let's talk now. Now, again, I told you I'm talking about LARRS only because it is one of the labs in the School of Health Professions and just an example. And probably the one I know more of the workings around. Okay? So the LARRS, each lab also has its own website that you can access directly. And this is the web connection to the lab's website. If you click on it, it takes you, whoops. Okay. Normally it should take you to the LARRS lab, but anyways, if you access the labs via the last website we went through, you would see the LARRS lab there too, and you can always navigate it from there. Okay, so who makes up the LARRS lab? Dr. Hannes Devers, he's seated right here in front, he's the director of the lab. I am the co-director, so believe it or not, I get instructions from him. He tells me when to be in the lab and when not to come into the lab. That's fine with me. You know, and we have PhD students, and some of them are here. Melika Kaya is behind, and Melika is the T32 grant that Dr. Nudo has, and she's a beneficiary of that because she has 3 years of her doctoral education funded through that grant. Alisa Nasrin, I saw her, yes, she's there, and Pedram Hamid. And Sangi is here. Bumi Moron-Folar is a doctor who is working in our lab. And then you can see the faculty with whom we are affiliated now. And that's Dr. Bhattacharya, of course, Linda Da Silva, and Jamie Myers. I would hope to see 1, 2, 3 faculty from PMR be a part of this. And how can you be a part of that? We will see in a minute. Okay. So what do we really do? We do more brain activity and brain disorders. We do all neurological problems. One that we would like to do is spinal cord injuries. We don't do a lot of that. A lot of people have said, why are you not into that? Traumatic brain injuries, why are you not doing that? You know. The other thing we would also like to do is community reintegration, physical activities in all these neurological cases. So we look at it more from highly cognitive demanding functional tasks, because again, like I was discussing with Dr. Mitra a couple of weeks ago, we're beginning to be more interested in the cognitive process behind motor actions rather than the motor activity itself. A lot of research are going on motor activities, and the assumption is that the cognitive process behind such activities are intact. But in many cases, we're finding very good muscle strength, very good joint mobility and everything, yet very poorly coordinated movements. Okay? So gait, well, driving is the big one we've done, and you will see some presentation of that. And then again, cognitive workload. This is more for neurological problems, and especially those that are progressive in nature. And cognitive motor interference, which is the one I just described, which is the junction between the cognitive process behind the motor action and the motor action itself. Okay, so what are the things we have in our lab? We have a full driving simulator. The cool thing I would tell you is what is really different about our own lab, I would say, not only in Kansas, not only in the US, across the world, is many of the researchers rely on computer experts or the manufacturers of the computer to write programs for them. Or they just use the generic programs that come with the simulator. Dr. Davis and I have invested a lot of time, and I would say we have a library of, if I'm not exaggerating, we have a library of close to 150 different scenarios that we have written. for our own use and that are highly sought now. But the important message there is you just need to come up with what you want to do. You tell us what you want to do. What is it you want to test in the patient? We will tell you these are the best scenarios to get those out, and we will write them up for you and work with you on that. So we really don't need to go outside to get that done. Now, one of the problems the simulators had is, you can see it's big, it's fixed, so patients usually have to come to the simulator. Normally these are people who cannot drive, so they rely on people to bring them to the simulator. So accessibility to the simulator has always been a problem, and very few institutions have. To overcome that problem, we sat in-house, Dr. Davis and I, and developed our own portable driving simulator. Of course, the fidelity is not as high as the previous one, but it still does the job. The advantage to this is we can move it to anywhere the patient is. We can take it with us anywhere, we can easily fold it up, and it becomes like a furniture in our office or in our lab. And patients still get to drive it like they were driving the real simulator. So now we're beginning to do research at the Fairway Center on Shawnee Mission Road. We could take them to the London Center. We could bring them to the lab space that we found, that we just had in Delp and in all the places. Okay, so we, of course, vision is really very important for driving, so we have our own vision testing system. This test is just a cognitive test. It looks at speed of processing, divided attention and selective attention, and all these are related to driving. Then the eye tracker. In one of the studies, you would see the title is very interesting, and Dr. Davis came up with the title. It says, "The eyes have it." Wherever you go, wherever you walk, whatever you drive and everything, you need good vision. And so, what is it you're looking at? The other thing we are able to track with this is we're able to also look at the pupillary dilation to be able to calculate the cognitive workload that I just mentioned earlier. So this is the eye tracker version of it, and that's what I think Dr. Melika is, she's smiling because, okay, you know. And then, of course, we're interested in some imaging as well as electroencephalographic measure of cognitive workload. And part of the collaboration is Dr. Nudo did ask me once, oh, we're trying to invest in buying a 256 lead EEG. Would your school be interested in contributing? And I said, of course. That's all what collaboration is all about. We're lucky on this campus to have an imaging unit dedicated purely to research, not affiliated with the hospital. In many institutions, it is just the hospital. So doing research with them is a problem because you're competing with the same space for patients. Okay, but here we have one dedicated to us, and I think it's one that we can make good use of. Okay, so we have the treadmill, but our treadmill is not the regular treadmill you will find in other labs. It can function as a regular treadmill, but I'll go on to the next slide and show you what this treadmill does.
Conventional gait and balance therapy can be very limited when it comes to providing tailored training intensity, variation, and task-specific exercises all at the same time. But there is a solution to these limitations. An advanced assessment and training treadmill that simulates realistic everyday life challenges through augmented and virtual reality technology. Enter the C-Mill. Together with its highly sensible force plate, C-Mill utilizes real-time interactive technology, providing a unique, motivational, effective and safe therapy to improve balance, steady gait, gait adaptability and dual tasking, fast and effectively. Since there's no need to set up overground training environments, and because the C-Mill's applications can be changed very quickly, the time ratio spent on actual training can be greatly increased. CMIL therapy applies science-based motor learning principles to clinical practice. Through a wide variety of immersive applications, the CMIL provides high-intensity and functional gait adaptability training with live feedback interaction, thereby maximizing your patient's performance. In addition, highly reliable real-time data and in-depth after-session reports measure and save a patient's performance for short and long-term evaluation. A front and side camera extend the CMIL's assessment capabilities during and after therapy sessions even further. The CMIL provides more than just walking therapy. A reliable body weight support system enables lifting up and weight-reducing functionality, while staying both stable and movable. Special balance applications extend training possibilities and permit an earlier start of the rehabilitation process. But the CMIL doesn't only provide functionality. The visual and auditory stimulation and game-like exercises deliver a variety-rich and confidence-building experience, full of enjoyable and rewarding moments, keeping the patient immersed and encouraged. Because nothing beats a motivated patient with near endless training possibilities, provided by you. Motec. Improve human performance.
Okay, so the other thing we have is a force plate system that we use to detect center of mass pressure displacements and again the cognitive motor interference. I would tell you my own fascination with a treadmill like that. In my clinic days, I'd worked with this patient purely. I applied my research in my clinical practice, and I'd worked with this patient and used all the principles of motor learning. Believe you, this was a stroke patient recovering from stroke, and I was teaching him to go back into community ambulation and integration. And I would have him walk on the treadmill, and I will toss balls at him. So he couldn't hold on to the bars. He would catch the ball and throw it back to me. And I thought I was training his coordination, keep the treadmill going, still be able to focus on the ball, catch it, throw it, aim it back at me, and everything. And we kept on doing that. And it got to a point I thought I had pushed the patient to the limit. And I discharged him. And he said he would go home and tell his wife all the things he did. And he said on the last day, the wife came with him and would like to tell me thank you for all that I have done, and that she was waiting in the car. So we got out of the clinic, and her car was parked across the road. And we got to the road, and there were no cars coming. And I said, okay, let's go. And he froze. And I was like, what's the problem with you? And he said, Abiodun, in all the things we train, we didn't train on running away from cars coming. I'm not sure if I get in the middle of the road and cars suddenly start coming, what happens to me? You know? And I said, no, you're fine. And he said, yeah, you can say that. It's not you. You will take off and I will be there. I'm not fine. You know? And it struck me that perhaps I had not thought of his context, his environment. So I asked him, I'm willing to speak to the insurance company, and if you don't mind, I would extend your treatment by another 2 weeks, and you don't have to pay for that. And he said, well, I'll be glad to do that. And this time, we went into real environmental context. We introduced a lot of obstacles. We went out. We walked and everything. And the one sentence he said that struck me was, at the end of the second week, he said, well, this is the real thank you. For the last few weeks, you treated the condition. These last 2 weeks, you treated me. And for that, I said, thank you. And we went back to that road, and he said, you know, after having done it, now I think I can cross. And we walked over to his wife, and we said, thank you. And again, it just helped me reinforce how research, practice in the real context in which the patients live and will use it, is the best way of reintegrating them to their preconditioned routine and what they used to do. So, right now, the LARRS Research Lab is focused on drive safety to improve performance on long-haul truck drivers. That's the study we're doing with Dr. Bhattacharya. Cognitive workload reflects subliminal cognitive impairment in preclinical Alzheimer's disease. I think that's the one at the Fairway campus. You saw one of our collaborators was Jamie Myers from the School of Nursing. She's a registered nurse, and she's pioneering the effort on cognitive effort in breast cancer survivors. Increased cognitive effort during dual tasking and relationship with falls in Parkinson's disease. And we're looking at that as well, or we were interested in looking at that as well in patients with multiple sclerosis as well. And that's the one I said, the eyes have it, the use of pupillometry to assess cognition in multiple sclerosis. And I think that's funded by the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. Eye-catching measures of cognitive fatigability and daytime sleepiness in multiple sclerosis, and developmental validation of a low-cost portable driving simulator, which we showed you. So these are funded research all going on in the lab at this time. Now, trust me, we're not overwhelmed. We're looking for more opportunities. But like I said, and I paraphrased earlier, my essence of this presentation is not to introduce the LARRS lab to you as the only lab you can collaborate with. The LARRS lab presentation is just to give you an insight into one of the labs in the School of Health Professions. I still would say your biggest resource is going back to that page and navigating all the labs in the School of Health Professions, and let us develop collaborations that can work together. The good news is I spoke with Dr. Raj Mitra, and we both agree that we will need to put in some resources at the onset to collect pilot data, to even look at proof of concept. Can the relationship we're thinking about work? What are the data we need to collect? Those are our lowest hanging fruits at this time. And hopefully in another 2-3 years, we can start to see huge return on investments with extramural funding. So I guess thank you for your attention. And I promised Charalia, where's she? I promised that she wouldn't have to lift up the 10-minute card. So I'm still about 6 minutes from seeing the card. So, questions? This is a question time.
Thank you. That was a wonderful overview. And one of our biggest opportunities in our department is trying to engage the young learner. So residents, fellows, and junior faculty. What advice or opportunities might be there specifically for our residents? Because we'd like to start serving so we can help. Will they just look at that website and pick someone and make? What advice would you give?
You know, that's a very good question. The same is true with our relationship with the Department of Neurology. As a matter of fact, the validation of the portable simulator, I have one resident from neurology working on that, and we had submitted grants together. For residents and junior faculty, my only advice is go on that website. I promise you, if you need the icebreaker to get in touch with the faculty, send me an email, and I will forward your email to whoever is related to that research and facilitate it. Sometimes, I'm not sure why, sometimes things work faster here when the parties know that it has the support of the highest person. It's not my style, but I've known several times when my faculty says it was difficult to go through this place, and I place a call, and they go like, "Oh, let him come." I know that works here, and I'm glad to do that. I'm glad to connect you with our faculty. Typically, what comes with that is if you come up with an idea, then it becomes, how do we get started? I also commit to finding some resources to help us get started. Good enough, we have a fantastic relationship with the Research Institute. I'll give you an example. The DOT study, we had under budgeted, all right? As in, we thought an incentive to the participants will get them to come. In reality, when we started speaking with the participants, they needed twice that amount of incentive. And I just simply went back to the Research Institute and showed them the future prospects of this. And in about 30 minutes, I got the commitment, go ahead and double it and we will fund the difference. That's what opening doors requires, and sometimes in research. And I promise, because this is really something, like I told you, I have a long history with PMR. This is something that I really want to see happen, and I'm glad your chair wants to see it happen. I'll be glad to help with that. And our Associate Dean for Research, Dr. Susan Carlson, it is interesting that her major commitment is actually to young and upcoming researchers. And so she's providing a lot of opportunities for them. And if you actually send her an email as well and say you would like to talk to her, I bet you she'll be glad to talk to you. She's really very experienced. She has several R01s, and she would be able to help you with that. Any other questions?
I have another one more specifically about that. This is part of it is an anecdotal story. My wife called me the other day and said that a family friend's young daughter who's come back from college was involved in a hit and run by a 93-year-old. And I think this is quite common
Oh, yes.
in this area, and we have a lot of patients who have not only neurologic injury, but many of them are just, senile dementia or geriatrics. How could our clinicians work with the driving simulation laboratory if, for instance, we have a patient that we're worried about, or is there like a formal evaluation that you go through? How does it work, and how can they get a patient over there?
So I'm going to show you So this is the LARRS lab, which I was trying to open the other time during the presentation. And the lady in there, Amber Khan, is a driving rehabilitation specialist and our clinical person. So if you go on the LARRS lab webpage, there is the clinical services portion, which is there, and you can request a driving evaluation, and that will generate you information on how to make your referrals and how to contact the lab. And this is an official. Now, you could want to know for your own medical decision if to prevent the patient from driving. But at the same time, if the patient has had any reasons why they've lost their driver's license and would like to restore it, these evaluations are also official and will help them restore their driver's license. And all the details are in there. And as a matter of fact, the advantage in the clinical service we render is when we generate our results, you will get a copy, the referring physician will get a copy, and you're open to further discuss those outcomes with us, but they're presented in ways that makes it very easy for you to understand them, because we purely do our clinical service from a medical standpoint, and that makes us different from the general driving services out there.
And you can email Amber, or there's also, I think she has a O2 order now, driving evaluation. And it was
Yeah.
great. So I refer to her a lot.
Yes. And so please tell us your experience with the times you have referred patients to her.
So I do mostly stroke rehab.
Yes.
So we take them on inpatient, and then we get them home, and then I see them in clinic, and then they go through outpatient therapy, and then usually at the end of outpatient therapy is the time to talk about, are you ready to get back to driving?
Yes.
So that's kind of one of the last parts of my rehabilitation process, and referring to a driver's evaluation is the standard of care, really, to figure out if they are ready to go back.
Yeah.
So we make a referral, they see Amber, and then we get back a report, and then we talk about it with the patient, and either release them to driving or recommend that we do some more rehabilitation
Training. So thank you for saying that, because that's the other thing we do. We don't stop at you cannot drive now. We actually work with the patient to see, is this a problem that will benefit from rehabilitation? We offer them rehabilitation in our clinic. And so I would tell you, Dr. Davis and I are products from the Catholic University of Leuven in Belgium. The system in Leuven, I told you, has an advanced rehabilitation institute, and that's where we see all the stroke patients who are going through rehab. And actually my doctoral project was in driving after stroke, and it was with the stroke rehab. Now, I would say, if I'm not wrong, that service simply endeared the Rehabilitation Institute to the hearts of many Belgians, because not only would you go there for your regular stroke rehab, in-house you have the opportunity to be evaluated for your driving performance, and where it is inadequate you have the opportunity to retrain on them. And I remembered when I was doing my research and I was offering training to all to the patients, most patients would rather skip their PT rehabilitation, their OT rehabilitation, and they would be queuing in front of my lab. And so we had to have an agreement that if you are coming to my lab, you must show evidence that you have gone for your PT rehab and your OT rehab, and not substitute this. That's how interesting it was for the patients, because it's reality. Mobility is reality. Driving is about social status and everything. I had one of my highest profile patient at the time was the head of cardiology in the hospital. And he, of course, he was the big boss. So even the therapists, the physicians, the residents, nobody could tell him, don't do that, because he was just the real big boss. So he was the one who told everybody just what he wanted. So he was the one who said, well, I don't care what you do, I don't care who you are, I just want to do the driving rehab. So I had to sit him down one day and I said, I know everybody would not talk to you, but you got to understand that you need a whole spectrum even to benefit from this maximally. So if nobody's bold enough to tell you, I am going to tell you, we got to moderate how many times we do this. And I said, but what's driving you? Why do you want to do this? And he said, there are like 5 other senior professors waiting to take his job, and that the only way he could prove to them that he's back on the job and does not need anyone to take over his job is if he drove himself to work. And he said, so he's not going back to work until he can drive. And if he drives, he's going to drive right in front of the hospital and park where nobody should park, so that everybody can see him driving. And then everybody would go like, who's parked there? And then they're going to say it's Dr. Demetrius or whatever his name is. And they would say, he drove himself? And you'll say, well, I did it on purpose to tell you I'm back. That's how important it is to them. And there's several stories like that. So I think a high experience is real, and I think if you offer such services to patients, it really improves and extends the spectrum of care available to those patients. And trust me, they talk about it and the words go around really fast.
Can they do in the driving evaluation on the inpatient unit within the hospital?
Do they?
I think it would be.
I think it's
early.
Yes, it's too early. I think it's outpatient.
Yeah.
Yes, it's subacute chronic. not in any of the acute cases, no. Yeah. So, any other questions? Well, thank you very much for having me.